This is the way. Welcome back to Bring Your Own Lightsaber. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan. I'm once again joined by Cam, and we are here to break down episode 2 of Mandalorian season 3. Cam, how we doing today?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Chapter 18 in the books. Pretty good one, too. A good follow-up. We're still kind of building up, so nothing too crazy has happened yet. But some good fight scenes, some good dialogue, and a handful more just kind of Easter eggs kind of snuck in there as to what we can kind of expect going forward.
I think we are off to a great start with season 3. This episode kind of picked things up with a surprise. I think we weren't expecting to head right to the Minds of Mandalore.
Yeah.
We thought maybe we'd have some side quest to go and repair IG-11, but no. Episode starts out and Tatooine.
Yeah. And we're back in our hangar with Din's good friend, blanking on her name now.
Oh, shoot. What is her name? I don't know, but we love her.
We love her. Great character.
Everyone does.
Hustling as always, working with the Jawas.
Just ripping people off left and right, but she loves it. She loves it.
She has a good heart, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right? She cares about Grogu.
That's all that matters.
That's all that matters.
Most important thing in Mandalorian, are you for or against Grogu? And if you're against, you got to die.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Simple as that.
Yeah. So Jin, he kind of lands in her bay, and he's saying, you know what? I think you might have the parts I need for IG-11. And she says, you know what? You don't need IG-11. We got R5-D4 coming back from episode 4.
Episode 4.
What a nice little callback.
Yeah, it's nice to get these small kind of throwback details put in there. And Ryan, I liked how you called what you called him during the episode, R2-D2's anxious cousin. It's just nice that they're bringing back these just the little things, you know. It's just it's not too overboard, because I feel like that's kind of been a lot of the issues with Star Wars as of late, is they're trying to be too much like the originals and the old movies. But yeah, it's nice that Mando just has its own identity, but they're still giving us these little callback details.
And this episode had a lot of those, and we'll get into that later, but just so many little things without really hitting us over the head with it, and just peppering those little things in. You just get so hyped watching the
just
episodes.
the little tidbits of nostalgia to go in with the great show that Mando already is. It's the icing on the cake.
So Mando, he says, all right, I just need any droid at this point. He recruits R5-D4. He gets him set up with a nice little cockpit in the bat there. And they head to Mandalore.
Yeah, right away. No, nothing else. They're just diving right in,
which is awesome.
Yeah, and that's what, makes it such a good show. They're not going to beat around the bush. There's not going to be any wasted time, any wasted details. They're just giving us what we want. Plot development, just getting right to the juicy stuff.
It seems like we're following a main storyline right now. This is not a filler or a side quest. This is the storyline. So we head to Mandalore. I don't know if he picked the best spot to land. He decided to go right through the storm.
Yeah, I would have thought that, maybe the instruments on his ship could have told him, like, hey, there's a giant lightning storm right here. Maybe don't go through these particular clouds. But I'm guessing maybe he just used some specific coordinates that Bo-Katan gave him or something like that. And she was like, yeah, just go here and you'll find it. So that's probably what he was doing. He was just going the most direct route. Who knows if that was the smartest thing to do, but he gets through it. It's fine. And he lands on Mandalore. We see he bursts through the clouds, and we can kind of see right away the ruins of the civilization. At first, we didn't really see any of the dome structures or anything. We do get that a little bit later on.
But I thought the planet itself might have been somewhat messed up, but we still got a full sphere.
Full sphere, full circle. And yeah, we see everything's blown to bits. It's actually really cool visuals, I thought, when he landed the ship, and you can just kind of see everything was crystallized, like they said, from I think they called them the fusion bombs that the Empire used. across the planet. And I was sitting here wondering, how many bombs would it take to bomb a literal entire planet?
Mhm.
But like you said, Ryan, I guess Palpatine can do anything when you are the Senate and you call the shots like that. But cool visuals, cool to see kind of the remains of the
Yeah.
planet. And it kind of left me wondering in the back of my head, if we somehow get Bo-Katan back on track with her plan, it's like, what's going to be the plan to rebuild this place?
Right. I mean, well, to start, we know breathable air.
That is a good start.
That's a good start. She might have to take care of those creatures, which
Might
we'll
have to
get
take care of
to.
the creatures, get them back to the wastelands,
The
like she says later
wasteland.
on. But I guess the whole planet now is pretty much a wasteland. Um,
But this is actually huge for them as a civilization. They were under this impression that their whole planet was uninhabitable. They could not return.
right. So it
That's
opens up, whole new pathway for them. They can get that fleet, turn them around, and say, hey, look, we can come back. And actually, it's kind of surprising that no one went down there
right.
before this.
No one
No
thought to
one, no
give
one
that a
tested,
try.
except I guess whoever it was that brought back that little inscription that the armorer had.
True.
But you'd think that would be more widespread knowledge, I guess,
Yeah.
if people have been there.
I think that guy was a pirate, and I
Yep.
think there's probably some pirates maybe hanging out there.
Maybe, yeah.
Could be a way to bring back the folks we
The Pirate
saw
King.
in episode 1. Maybe he's
Yep.
been hanging out in
Yeah.
Mandalore.
And I guess if maybe a pirate said, ooh, I went and I got this inscription off the surface of Mandalore, people probably wouldn't necessarily believe that
True.
right away.
Right. They're like not the most reputable guy, Mr. like spinach looking pirate king. But that's a huge thing for the Mandalorian people, especially. She just told us how fractured they are.
Mm-hmm.
Now they have somewhere they could all go.
Right. Maybe this could be the thing that kind of reunites all these different tribes almost, or the
Mhm.
different groups of Mandalorians that, like Bo-Katan says, have just been fighting each other for all these years now. Maybe this can kind of be the one thing that brings them all back together and kind of unifies them as a society or civilization again.
And that's what they said in the preview. The armorer's little speech about the previous Mandalore kind of conquered the Mythosaur, rose up, and brought them all together, brought them like to the fullness of their society. So could be a theme of
Could
the
be
season.
a theme, and could be kind of a little insight into what we can expect for the rest of the season, especially after we talk about a couple more details towards the end of the episode.
Yes.
So Mando lands. He's trying to show Grogu that everything's all right when R5 goes out to read the atmosphere. What I'm wondering is, why in the first place did he have to go down to that little tunnel? Why couldn't he just read the air right outside the ship? But, you got to advance the plot somehow.
Maybe an Alamite got him.
Yeah, one of the Alamites.
No, because he was looking pretty good in the cave.
That's true.
Yeah.
He maybe his signal disappears. That's what causes Grogu to kind of freak out and cause Din to have to go out. Also, kind of cool that his helmet can kind of seal and everything, so he could have gone out anyway. He didn't necessarily need a droid, I guess. If he had an atmospheric reader with him, he could have just done it.
I guess that was more for Grogu.
Yeah, true. But maybe his signal disappeared just because he went underground or something like that.
Right, that's probably it.
But Din goes out after R5 and gets attacked by a little squad of these Alamites. Thank you, that's the word. Trying to sort out the new terminology.
Incredibly jacked, like gorilla-looking creatures.
Yeah,
I really like their design.
They are cool. Yeah,
they're new. As far as I know, they're new. I don't remember seeing them in Clone Wars.
Yeah, I don't recall them from Clone Wars or anything
I like that.
But
they're just
it's
cool
a
little
addition.
Like creatures that Mando could beat up.
Yeah, they're almost like the Tusken Raiders of Mando.
That's a good comparison.
Maybe a little bit less advanced, but
right.
They got their little clubs and everything, and it turns into a cool fight scene. We get to see Mando use the Darksaber again, and we were talking about it. It still seems to have this kind of heavy weight to him because, like you're saying, he still hasn't quite accepted his destiny of what it means to hold the Darksaber and be the wielder of it. But he takes some blows. Good thing for the Beskar, and he fends them off and goes back to the ship. he sees kind of the remains of the inner city, the civic center, I think they called it, of
Hmm.
that city, and heads back. And they get the atmospheric reading, and Grogu's safe to come out.
He's ready. He's gonna hop in his pod, and they're heading off
Yeah,
to the mines.
off to the bath.
One thing for me about the fight scene, yeah, again, like you mentioned, the dark saber, it's it looks so heavy in his hand,
Right. It's
and
he can't when he's not swinging it around. He can't hold it like above his knees.
yeah. So we don't know if it's really intended for him at this point, or if he has to earn that
Right.
lightness.
Or if it's more of almost a mentality thing.
Yeah,
And I think I said it in the last episode, but it's funny to me to think that he believes so much in the creed of being a Mandalorian and all these traditions and having to. He took his helmet off once, or a handful of times, but he has to go back to bathe in these living baths to redeem himself. But he still won't quite accept the fact that this is the tradition, right? That if he
right.
has a saber, then he has to like own up to his role. So hopefully, either he will or he'll be able to pass it on to someone else, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute here. But yeah, just really heavy, a little clunky to see him fight in it, but it almost adds a cool element to some of these fight scenes that
Yeah,
he's not just this Jedi that's going to whip out his
true.
lightsaber and chop down a million droids
Yeah,
in a minute, right? He had a lightsaber, and it took a lot of effort to get rid of these 3 or 4 Alamites that had wooden clubs.
he's fighting, and you're still slightly worried for him, and you're seeing him take shots, like pretty good shots. I mean, thank God for that armor,
Yeah,
or he would not have survived this one. That would be
no,
end of the show.
yeah,
It's now Bo-Katan's show, but now that armor, it holds up. He takes a couple shots, and
he is the man of close calls.
yeah, that's a good way to put it. He's been beat up over the three
A lot
seasons
of
for
times,
sure.
yeah.
He got beat up in this one, and well, we'll get to that. I mean, he gets the reading. He heads back into the cave, and they go down kind of further. He doesn't really know where he's going. But they do keep
They see some
descending.
signs. They're descending.
Yeah,
Can I just say, all I can think about as they're flying down deeper into the city to find the shafts, all I can think about is if I had one of those jetpacks on my back, I'd just be burning my butt the whole time. I don't
right.
know how you're saying they got a little angled butt plate of Beskar to deflect the flames.
I think the classic Mandalorian tradition of a butt plate
Yeah,
is something.
it must have to be there.
Once you get initiated to the cult, you'll discover the
Yeah.
ways of the butt plate.
Otherwise, they'd have some pretty fried cheeks. That's all I can think about. But they're descending down. They're descending down, and Mando's he's like, oh, this looks like it's the right way. This is taking us deeper. He's just kind of aimlessly wandering around, and he stumbles across what looks like a old Mandalorian helmet
Mhm.
made out of the Beskar. And he's looking at it. He takes a second, and then boom, out of nowhere, we get this weird mechanical spider crab
Yeah.
scoop him up, and they carry him off into the depths of Mandalore.
I actually, when the spider droid, spider cyborg,
I think is
I
the more
actually was
accurate.
getting Darth Maul Clone Wars
Yeah,
vibe
after
when
he was chopped up.
first kind of rediscovered by
Mhm.
Palpatine in his mechanical stage. It kind of looked like that design,
Right.
and I was going, "Oh, I don't know what's going on
Yeah.
here."
You
And
brought up Grievous as well.
yeah, Grievous with the sort of his second form. Once he leaves
Mhm.
giant spider form, he kind of takes on this other droid form that certainly was giving Grievous energy, especially with the exposed.
Right. You could kind of see the yellow. I don't want to call it organs
I
necessarily,
think
but
so.
whatever. Yeah, the cyborg part of him.
I don't know why those type of people don't decide to better protect their
Yeah,
organs
cover it
when
up a little
it's
bit more.
pretty much an instant kill if those get hit.
As Grievous learned the hard way.
So yeah, Mando's captured. He's put in a cage. Again, I guess every time we're watching these episodes, we get so many callbacks or like things that are reminiscent of previous Star Wars, and I guess that's why we like this show so much.
Yeah.
Probably we're just going, oh my god, that, and this too is reminiscent of other things we've seen in Star Wars, like Luke in the cave on Hoth, or
Mhm.
there's this creature. He's got our main character. luckily Grogu's there.
Right. This is one we were actually discussing while the episode was going on. How is Grogu's pod controlled? And I think this is the first time we can really definitively say it is not controlled by Din Djarin or his little pad on his wrist.
We saw that in the past. We did see
he does set it, and
some
we thought it
control on
would
the
follow
wrist. Yeah.
Din, but this is the first time we see Grogu just kind of fully controls it on his own. He's calling the shots.
He's pretty good. He's a good handler.
Yeah, he swivels it around pretty well.
He knows how to do it.
He could be like an F1 driver or something. So we see the cyborg guy strips Din of his gun, his knife, and the darksaber, and we instantly knew that he was not related to Grievous because he did not immediately scoop up the lightsaber to add to his collection.
Yeah, that was a big tell. That was, okay, not Grievous, automatically.
Yeah, definitely not.
Automatic.
But last we know, we see Mando in this cage, Grogu standing there watching him get disarmed, and he kind of, once the cyborg walks away to go do who knows what, Grogu kind of sneaks up and he tries to use the Force to open up the cage, but was unsuccessful, unfortunately.
He got noticed.
He got noticed. He put a pretty good attempt into it. He shook it up real good. And obviously we've been seeing this season, he's getting way stronger using the Force. And even in a couple of scenes coming up that we'll talk about, he's getting way, way better at it. But just not able to open up this cage. Obviously, it was locked shut, and he's just not strong enough to get it open. And unfortunately, kind of rattled the cage and made the cyborg guy notice.
He got noticed, and Mando says, "Find Bo-Katan."
Right, and then he does a little Force skip out of there while the cyborg guy is trying to shoot him with lightning. Gets in his pod and zooms on out of there.
I was not expecting this. I really thought, okay, we saw this depressed Bo-Katan in the previous episode. She's kind of saying, like, I'm done. I'm out of the game.
Right.
But somehow Mando knew if he was in trouble, that's the person to go to.
Right. Especially if it's something to do with Mandalore. I think
that's true.
It's definitely telling that she still cares about what her original mission was. Just the fact that she's still kind of in it and involved, and Mando thinks he can rely on her. So we see Grogu zoom off. He almost gets caught by like this little dragon bird thing.
Yeah.
And then as he's nearing the end of the cave on his way out, one of the Alamites jumps right in front of him, and we're like, oh gosh, this is gonna end terribly. Right. And next thing we know, we get a shot from the outside of the cave with the Alamite just thrown out of there with tremendous force, and Grogu comes out with his hand up with a massive Force push.
That was just an awesome size matters not moment.
David versus Goliath, doesn't matter. Grogu's a beast now. We can kind of rely on him. We're doing the math, and we kind of think it works out to, from Yoda years to human years, he's probably about, 5?
If we assume Yoda died at 900, and let's say in our years, that's 90.
Right.
And if Grogu's 50, that would put him at 5.
Pretty much, yeah.
So we're
maybe
hoping,
like 5, 6.
Yeah, we're hoping he would be verbal at 5 in most cases.
He still does his little coups. Yeah, maybe he's speaking just a different language.
Actually, back on Tatooine, the mechanic was saying, was that his first word?
Brings up that maybe he cooed out his first real words,
which I think everyone is excited to hear at some point.
Oh yeah,
if that's this season, that's awesome.
It's just cool to see though that he's kind of, we can kind of rely on Grogu now. He's getting to that point where he's not just a little baby, He has his own powers. He can do his own thing. He can hold his own now, and
he's powerful.
Yeah, that I just got beat up by a 5-year-old, so pretty embarrassing.
He's gonna put that on his resume. One thing we glossed over earlier was while Mando and Grogu were on the way to Mandalore, Mando was kind of showing him how navigation works, I guess.
He's teaching him these kind of life skills, if we can call it that, and saying how Mandalorians kind of rely on reading maps and knowing how to, never get yourself lost. Yeah. And those skills, obviously, as we see, Mando's been teaching Grogu a lot, and the skills are going to kind of come back to help him out here in a minute. As he gets to the ship, he does another cool little Force flip into the ship, and R5's there waiting for him, and Grogu knows exactly. Says, "Hey man, get us to this planet." As he's looking on the planetary system map around Mandalore, because he knew that's where Bo-Katan was, because that's what Mando taught him.
Just good storytelling, just setting things up, and just sort of going back to last episode too. They do set these things up, and you unexpectedly it ends up somewhere else. Like you wouldn't really expect, oh, Mando's going to get separated and Grogu's going to have to immediately in the same episode have to navigate.
Right. So he's getting stronger with the Force, but also he's kind of growing up in terms of survivability. He knows what to do. He's a quick learner, and he can kind of be relied on more, to handle more things. He's not just a helpless little kid anymore.
Yeah, it's nice that he is a full-fledged character who has his own arc. Mando's going through his journey, and this is Grogu's journey to just kind of grow up, I guess.
Yeah. Now, would it have been nice to have IG-11 this whole time? Absolutely. Right. Would they have been in this pickle? Probably not.
Well, we found out it wasn't really necessary. That air is totally breathable.
Yeah.
He didn't really...
I guess in terms of backup fighting the cyborg and getting out of a pickle like this. But obviously, we need to have some development for Grogu, so I think this is a good way to kind of add it in. So we see Grogu fly off, tells R5 where to go. They head back to the castle on the other planet in the system and kind of get Bo-Katan back. And it was funny because when Bo-Katan gets up and she's storming over the ship, she's basically like, I'm done. What do I have to tell you to prove to you that I'm done with all this?
Yeah.
And next thing you know, she's talking to an empty cockpit and Grogu pops up and she immediately knows something's wrong, obviously, and basically is instantaneous to realize, okay, let's go get him, let's go save him and get him back, because obviously she still cares about this.
And for her, she has that reading from the droid, and now she knows, oh, shoot, Mandalore is breathable.
Right.
That's something that's important for her. So easy motivation to get her down there and see what's going on.
Right. Again, you would think with someone with those big of an ideas to get Mandalore back, you think that she would have gone down to test that atmosphere a while ago. But better late than never.
Just in her castle all alone, sitting on that throne. She'd rather be doing that.
But it's cool to see she jumps right back in, no hesitation. We get her cool Mandalorian ship that you mentioned was one of the coolest ones out of Clone Wars.
Yeah, it's always nice to see that ship. Haven't seen it in a while. I guess since season 2 of Mandalorian, we didn't really see that in Boba Fett, I don't think.
No.
Those are just such a nice Dave Filoni design, and
very aesthetically pleasing. The wings rotating up on the landings and takeoff.
Nice and roomy in there too.
Yeah, nice and big.
We got the cockpit view, and
not quite as crammed as the new Razor Crest, if that's what we're calling it.
Right. So we're in that cool Mando ship. We go back to Mandalore again. Let's take the storm route to the surface.
Same route.
But no problem for that ship. She gets back into the mines.
On the way in, this is when she busts through the clouds to see the surface, and we do get a really good shot of the city from above, and you get to see the whole outline and some of kind of the ruins of the dome itself.
Yeah.
So it was cool to see how the dome itself looked, because I think it's the same one from the previews and stuff we saw from last season and this season, of the TIE bombers detonating the whole thing. So it's kind of cool to see some of it's still literally standing. Yeah. You can still see the outline, and there's still some, I'd almost even call it like identity to the planet, which was probably good for her to see when she came back in.
It's basically a collapsed dome, but there's elements of things that she would find familiar. So that's obviously powerful for her.
Right. So obviously, her being from the planet and all, she knows the quicker route of how to get there, and the easier way to get down to where Din is. We see them kind of fly down. She goes, "Okay, boom, we're going this way."
Yeah.
Grogu is obviously guiding her to exactly where the cyborg dude is.
He has a brief moment when he's guiding her where there's a little bit of fear. She kind of eggs him on, and he goes, "You know what? I got to go save my buddy."
Yeah.
And he gets over his fear. Again, just another moment kind of showing Grogu's on his own journey as well.
Right. So they're probably about a little more than halfway to getting back to Din when she pauses. Bo-Katan pauses, kind of has Grogu get back a little bit. She looks up at kind of the ceiling of this cave, whips out her blasters, and just starts going to town on it. And all of a sudden, we see 3 more of these Alamites drop down. I think she gets one of them with the initial volley of blaster fire, and then the other 1 or 2 just kind of sprint right at her, knock her guns out. We get this really cool fight scene of Bo-Katan just to kind of bring it back to us, just how much of a I really just want to call her a badass. That's exactly what she is. And
That's very accurate. And she really just was way more impressive than Mando. I'm
yeah,
so sorry.
yeah.
It was just night and day compared to the way.
I'd call Mando more of the weapons expert, but she in like hand to hand with like her knife, her
We
cable.
saw the wires come
Yeah,
the
the
cable.
wire.
Yep, that was nice.
And she has like a little like the wrist blade that kind of shoots out almost like
Yes.
Assassin's Creed, and she just handles these things like it's breakfast on a Sunday morning.
Another one of those Clone Wars callbacks. We get the sort of, I think it's called a vibro shield
Yep.
on her arm. It's always nice to see that come out and just blocking things left and right, and just an easy win for her.
Yeah.
Just showing how incredible of a fighter she is.
Right. Just like riding a bike. She pops right out, handles them no problem. She's a little more ruthless, I'd say, than Din is, and she just has no hesitation in killing a couple of them.
No.
And she basically looks back at Grogu when she's cleaning up the mess, and she says, "Hey, we would have been there lunch if I didn't do that." So probably a good thing for Grogu to kind of see that some people, things, whatever you want to call them, aren't always going to be the nicest people out there, right? And there's sometimes you just got to take care of business, at least in the new Mandalore. But from there, they get down to where Din is being held, and again, no hesitation from Bo-Katan. She just whips out her blasters when she sees the cyborg, starts going to town on him, and he turns around after taking a couple shots, so he's pretty sturdy, and lightning staff shocks her, whatever we want to call that thing, and kind of gets her down. But this just triggers another insanely badass fight scene for Bo-Katan when she uses her cable to snare the Darksaber on the ground next to her.
That was such a cool shot.
Oh man, the rest was history.
I don't know what we're calling him, Octo Pseudo Grievous, but he's basically like the boss fight of this episode, and kind of the same thing. I didn't really see the Darksaber fighting against her. I don't know about you.
No, because obviously she's had it before, and she is the one that kind of has that mentality of, she wants to kind of reunite the Mandalorians and stuff. And that almost, to me, tells me that once she picked up that Darksaber, and it just, no hesitation, no weight to her, it was just fluid and everything. It kind of almost tells me that she still has that fire in her, that she still wants to, even though she said, I've given up on it. I think her wielding the Darksaber basically just says she's not done. She hasn't given up. This is still her mission. She wants to do this because she has this mentality. She can take that Darksaber, flip it around like it weighs nothing, compared to Din, who could barely lift it off the ground.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess moving forward now, however you are holding that Darksaber is kind of symbolic of your, I don't know, I guess the kind of fire in your belly.
Leadership.
Will you be the potential person who can reunite Mandalore?
Right.
And that is kind of our breakdown of the Bo-Katan fight. And we're going to take a quick...
Fruit ninjas. Just do in seconds.
That was impressive. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back to kind of go over the rest of the episode, Din's rescue, and into the mines. And welcome back. We are here to finish up our sort of discussion of the Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 2. I believe we left off just kind of finishing off the Bo-Katan versus Grievous monster fight, and she now has a hold of the Darksaber.
Yeah, so Bo-Katan, like I said before, just absolutely fruit ninjas this cyborg as soon as she gets the Darksaber in her hands, and she chops him literally into little bits, but she didn't, take out the head or anything like that. So we see she chops him up, he falls down, she thinks she's got it in the bag. She goes over to Din to try to, get him out or whatever. She detaches the little blood sucking machine that he was hooked up to.
I was almost thinking, is that sucking like midichlorians out
Yeah,
of him?
something like that.
But
She did shoot it when she first entered, but he was obviously still hooked up to it and everything. So she gets him out of that, and he's kind of starting to come to it after a second there. He's trying to say something. She doesn't quite know what's going on, and all Mando can kind of mutter is behind you, obviously. And she turns around, and the little head of the cyborg dude had squirmed off like a little spider and hopped into his big mech suit, the crab mech suit thing. And he's coming after with everything he's got. And I mean, again, for like probably less than a second, I was like, oh crap, like she's in some trouble here. But literally within 1 second of her fighting this gigantic mech suit, I was like, oh wait, no, she is going to handle him like it's nothing. And she does exactly that.
it really was just absolutely nothing to her. She said, unfazed, let me just take this guy out real quick.
Yeah.
Don't mind me.
Got this 20-foot tall mech suit coming at her full force, and she's just dicing up its limbs left and right. She runs under it and guts it open, and then she tops it off by just decapitating it and taking out the head of whatever this cyborg thing is. Just piece of cake.
And again, just showing like, wow, she is very impressive with the Darksaber. And I think that was like right then in the episode where I said, wow, maybe she should be the ruler of Mandalore.
Yeah, like I know she didn't win it from Din, but she kind of proved herself with it in combat. So like right now I'm just left wondering, should she hold on to this thing? Because then she gets him out, and he takes a second, he wakes up, and they're all together. And as he's coming to, he obviously rushes himself up, and he starts packing his stuff up, and without hesitation, he grabs his gun, he grabs his knife, and he just scoops up the Darksaber, sticks it in his back pocket like nothing happened. And granted, he was probably like blacked out for that whole sight, the whole fight scene, and had no idea what she did. But I'm just thinking, like, man, maybe she should hold on to this thing, and maybe he should not be.
Yeah. And they kind of continue on. She knows exactly where the mines are, which is nice. Yeah. And they kind of continue on as a group towards the mine. She agrees to kind of be the guide. And even while you're just watching them walk towards the mine, you're in the back of your head, you're wondering, she could like challenge him at any point right now for that Darksaber.
Especially because he's weak from having his blood drained and all that stuff. But I thought it was really cool dialogue, this part where it's these two Mandalorians talking about kind of the ruins of this place, her home city, her home planet, and everything that she literally ruled for a short period of time, like she's saying. And she's basically just describing to Din, like, hey, these are all the things that you missed out on, that you never got to experience as a Mandalorian. And I'm just sitting there thinking, as this whole conversation is going on, maybe if he was able to see actual Mandalore in its prime, then he would kind of realize that the Creed isn't everything that he always thinks it is. Right. And Bo-Katan is almost kind of proof that the Mandalorian way isn't this strict cultish kind of group of people. They were a modern, advanced civilization.
Yeah.
And it's almost just like, man, why isn't he listening to her?
Not only that, you would think at some point he would maybe try to do some research on his people and just kind of, I know you're living in this post kind of imperial bombardment society, but maybe like read a book, see what Mandalore was all about back in the heyday, or just ask Bo-Katan, someone who lived in the height of that civilization.
And on top of this, all this cool dialogue is going on, but I think they were kind of sneaking in some flirting in there. She's talking about her dad, and he's like, "Oh, I would have liked to meet your dad. He sounds like a great warrior."
I don't remember what she said back, but it
No, no.
was equally as
Yeah,
flirty,
there's a little spark there, huh?
which I think could be. I mean, I'd like to see this pair continue
Yeah,
moving
they make a
forward.
great team.
I know
And as
originally,
team, I think I kind of mean Din Djarin gets in trouble and Bo-Katan goes and saves him.
right? She
But
is literally a badass in every sense of the word.
yeah,
Um, in earlier seasons, I think they kind of set up Cara Dune to
hmm.
be that person he would probably be teaming up with regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Now that she is out, maybe Bo Katan is filling that role moving forward. Of she could be an integral part of this sort of trio with
Yeah,
Grogu, which I'd love it because
right,
she had just proved herself to be so good
right.
in
She
every.
could be almost the new IG-11 for the squad if they can't get him fully back. If they can get him fully back, imagine them four together. Oh my god.
I don't mind if Mando dies and she becomes the main character. Honestly,
I would mind a little bit. I would mind a little bit. But no, watching her just mess stuff up and wield the
yeah,
dark saber like she does, it's just so entertaining. Just watching her fight is just, like I said, it's just so badass. Um, so she guides them down to the mines, and she's basically telling them when they get there, kind of the traditions, how she's been there before as the princess of Mandalore, and how everyone used to love the ceremony of it and the tradition of it. And she basically says when they get there, she's like, "Oh, I want you to have the full experience." And she reads this little plaque the next to the baths, and kind of it explains kind of what the purpose of it is, what the
yeah,
tradition of it is, the history of it, and all that stuff. And obviously, we can't see Mando's reaction to this or his emotions to it, but obviously, it kind of hits him right in the feels because he just stands there, he's looking at it like it's the Holy Grail, and
yeah.
he takes off all his stuff. First of all, I don't know why he took off all his stuff. I don't know why he takes off his jetpack and all that stuff, but he does. Maybe because that's the purest way to do it. Who knows? But he takes off all his stuff and he walks on in and he starts reciting the
Yeah.
traditional speech of cleansing his soul.
It was very like I'm a part of a cult and
Yeah,
I'm gonna go do this
definitely
thing I
was.
was told to do.
But he's obviously in his feels. He's reciting this phrase that he has to kind of cleanse himself. And next thing we know, he's yanked underwater.
He
just
sinks.
super suddenly.
Yeah.
And who goes to the rescue immediately? Again, without
Absolutely
hesitating.
no hesitation.
Bo-Katan's back.
Our Lord and Savior Bo-Katan jumps in there.
Jetpack boosts herself into the water.
Which awesome that those work underwater.
Really cool.
The other Mandalorians on that other planet.
Yeah, they were missing out.
They do not know what they're doing over there.
Yeah, they really don't. They were splashing around in the water. No jetpack use against that big animal.
Not at all.
But yeah, again, no hesitation. Just kind of shows how experienced she is. I think is kind of the best word for it. Is she always knows what to do. And is very quick to react.
And she establishes this in that scene very clearly. Is also her father was the ruler of Mandalore,
right?
Like legitimately. And so she has that kind of royal, I don't know, I guess
instinct, like
like it's
leadership instinct.
You're gonna have different qualities than a normal person,
right? It's almost a sense of like she's gonna fight for her people. But she dives right in. She's zooming around underwater, and eventually she gets to the bottom of the baths or whatever you want to call them, the living baths, and Mando's just kind of laying there almost unconscious.
Yeah.
At the bottom.
He wasn't looking too good.
Wasn't looking too good, per usual. It seems to be the theme here. And he's at least intact. She scoops him up and she's flying up, and what do we see?
We see the thing that we kept hearing rumblings about.
We saw the helmet of, we talked about in the last episode.
It is a ginormous mythosaur.
Yeah.
You see the horns very clearly.
We did a little bit of research on this.
Mm-hmm.
And Bo-Katan actually mentions them about how Mandalore the Great defeats one of these, and that's how he kind of becomes the first ruler and kind of unites Mandalore as a civilization.
Not only defeats, he tames it and rides it.
Right. Which
I would love to see that.
Boba Fett vibes.
Yeah. Hey, We got a lot of people who could be a
Yeah.
ruler of Mandalore. I
Yeah.
bet he can wield the dark saber pretty well.
He's good at taming and riding wild beasts.
Yeah.
So, but this thing is like otherworldly, right? This thing's head is the size of a house.
It's I don't know. I don't know what compares to that. Maybe the freaking dragon that we saw in season 2 on
Yeah.
Tatooine.
Yeah. But it's something. And all I could think of is A, why did it yoink Mando down there and then do nothing about it?
True.
And then two, on the way up, they were floating up. They just kind of, they almost like locked eyes, right? And it just stood there, just kind of watched them. It didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Didn't attack them, didn't swat at them, didn't eat them.
Mm-hmm.
And they just kind of make this weird eye contact. So I'm wondering if there's some like initial connection between either Mando and Bo-Katan and the Mythosaur. And maybe that's like the first steps to kind of taming it and proving to be the greatest Mandalorian. Something along those lines of, okay, it didn't attack them. It's obviously not against them. Who knows if it's with them? But it just another big plot twist involving some of these mythical creatures, like we've seen the Lightspeed space whales before. So they're kind of bringing in all these creatures, and can't help but feel that the end of this season is going to culminate with something big with all these creatures. Maybe it's going to have something to do with Ezra Bridger coming back and using his kind of special force ability to get these creatures to help them win whatever the big battle is that they end up fighting.
That's a good point. It's very clear that Ezra has this power that we haven't seen in anyone else, where he's so strong in his connection with creatures. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, it's they're definitely leaning into this kind of the more mythical side of Star Wars that we haven't seen before, with these creatures and these kind of different powers that we're hearing about.
Yeah.
And it's just building this excitement, because they lock eyes with the Mythosaur, they fly up to, breathe, and they land at the top of the baths. Again, Mythosaur doesn't chase them or anything like that. And boom, that's the end of the episode. And we're just left with this huge, unreal cliffhanger. Just left wondering, okay, what direction are they going to go in? Because they could go so many different ways now.
And just kind of getting back to when they were underwater, like you mentioned, the Mythosaur just kind of gives them a look.
Yeah.
Doesn't do anything, at least not in this episode.
Right.
Which is telling, because Bo-Katan mentioned earlier, she had done this ritual herself as a kid. Clearly, that's not what happened to her. She was not dragged underwater by a Mythosaur.
She definitely wasn't.
Pretty sure she would have mentioned that. But you're also wondering, okay, did the armorer know this would happen?
Right.
Is this part of your cult's ritual to get dragged down by the Mythosaur? Do you know the Mythosaur is in there?
She did have the helmet in her little office, if we can call it that, with the Mythosaur tusks coming out of it and everything. So maybe she does know something. She seems to have a lot of this knowledge of like the ancient Mandalorian culture. So maybe once Din gets back to her and brings this up, maybe she'll have some more insight for us. Yeah. And that's a really good point that I didn't necessarily think of. I'd
honestly like to learn more about who she is.
Who she is.
Just the fact that Bo-Katan kind of establishes herself. She's no longer, at least if you had just watched The Mandalorian, you'd probably be wondering more about her.
Right.
So this episode kind of gives you that backstory of what her sort of history was.
Good point.
We haven't gotten that with the armorer yet.
We haven't.
We don't know why she's able to lead this sort of cult.
Right. So we kind of have the two polar opposite ends of the Mandalorian spectrum, of Bo-Katan being the more advanced, cultured version of them, and then the armor, who's kind of the leader of this original ancient Mandalorian style cult, like we like to call it. And I feel like something's going to happen when they meet.
Yeah.
If they can kind of work out their differences to reunite Mandalore, or if they're just going to try to murder each other, like the past is shown to prove.
And the bottom line is, people know the name Bo-Katan. So yeah, that will be a very interesting meeting. I'd like to see that for sure moving forward. And yeah, I think that's a good segue into just where do we think things could go next.
Right. Especially, I think Bo-Katan made a good point of when she first gets down to the planet with Grogu, and she mentions something to the effect of, these Alamites survived the bombing, right? The purge. What else survived? Is this the only mythosaur? Are there more mythosaurs around the planet? Who else is there? Are there Mandalorians there still? Who knows who survived here? So it's just nice knowing there's all these different routes that the show could go in.
Yeah, and then again, she mentioned they're fractured right now. So I think, at least for me, that's where my mind is going with at least moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good sort of point that you brought up. If there's potentially a group of Mandalorians on Mandalore right now, we know there's another group on the moon where the armorer is.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the other groups? I don't know. But
And
just
there's the fleet out there somewhere.
The legendary fleet that we'd like to find. Actually, that was a major plot point of season 2, was they captured that giant ship.
Right.
We don't really know where that has gone.
Not yet.
But yeah, just establishing that maybe there could be Mandalorians living on Mandalore right now.
Those cities go deep. They go deep. If maybe not the whole thing was blown up by these fusion bombs, as they're calling them, maybe there's still a little society left of these Mandalorians on Mandalore that have been living there.
Yeah, and for me, I think that's going to be the turning point in her character, going from that sort of depressed, angry person to someone more revitalized and the idea of a new Mandalore.
Yeah.
Could be a good planet name. Just rebrand. New Mandalore.
New Mandalore. New York. New London. They do it all the time, don't they?
Star Wars. It's time. New Mandalore. I'm calling it.
So yeah. Any last comments or predictions? Where do you think they're going to go? What are you hoping for? What are we thinking is going to happen next?
I think it would be so badass if one of them tames the mythosaur.
That's kind of my hope now for the end of the season.
That would be incredible.
Still hoping for Ezra Bridger.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping one of them, if I had to guess, it would probably be Mando. But I mean, it'd be awesome if Bo-Katan could.
Or could it be Grogu?
Grogu was there. Grogu wasn't underwater, but he was there.
Yeah, right. Just knowing the power that the Force can have over a creature.
Maybe one of them will tame the mythosaur. Ezra Bridger comes back with his Lightspeed space whales, and they team up to have two badass people riding badass animals to fight the final boss.
Right. We just don't really know what the final boss is right now. We don't really have an adversary.
There isn't yet. No.
The pirates are out there, but I don't think.
We know Gideon's still out there.
Gideon might be in a cell. We don't quite.
That's true.
Remember.
They have mentioned the Empire still as being a threat, though.
I think that is the threat. I know that someone was giving Gideon his orders.
Especially if Tarkin comes back? No.
Thrawn.
Thrawn.
Yeah. It's probably Thrawn, honestly.
Yeah.
It's clear someone gave Gideon those orders to track Grogu.
Right.
We have no idea who it is right now.
We could honestly even just go through this season with just these small kind of side enemies, adversaries, and at the finale of season 3, kind of get the big villain for the next season. Which, if Ezra Bridger comes back, it would make the most sense to have Thrawn come back.
Yeah,
but only one way to find out.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly wouldn't be terrible, just because you are seeing it's clearly developing their characters so much, at least in the first few episodes. So not a bad thing to see if that's the route they go, of maybe small villains along the way. And if you want to do, like last season's big reveal was incredible. Not a villain, a pretty good hero that everyone knows and loves. If they want to do the same thing with a villain, I'm fine with that.
Right. And still hoping we'll get a hint of Luke here and there, just because we had it at the end of the last season, and I don't think they would have done the whole big comeback, the CGI recreation of Luke, just to only have him in the Book of Boba Fett. I think he has to come back this season at some point, right?
I don't know when the Ahsoka show comes out, but whenever that is, I think he's hanging out with her right now. I think the Book of Boba Fett established that, right?
Yeah, they were together in some degree. It seemed like Ahsoka was kind of popping in and out of Luke's new place and helping him build up his Jedi Academy.
But
Maybe we'll get both. Maybe we'll get Ahsoka and Luke in this season.
pretty much everyone would love to see more Luke.
Oh yeah,
Like
oh yeah.
Luke actually
I'm not
being a
gonna
character, not a pop in and out.
right. Not gonna complain about more lightsabers being added.
Yes.
So yeah, I think we have a lot to look forward to. I don't think there's anything we can necessarily say definitively.
Yeah.
Besides that, I still think he's definitely going to go to try to fix up IG-11. I think we'll get that back.
Yeah, that would be random if they brought him in only to do nothing with him.
Yeah, that's true. Aside from that, though, I mean, there's not many other hints that we don't even necessarily know what his next little mini side quest is.
Nope.
So we're just kind of left in limbo's massive cliffhanger, and a long week until chapter 19.
Yep. A long week, but we saw this today. We just read this sort of plot summary on Disney Plus before we started the episode, and just the little things like that get you so hyped. So
the anticipation just makes it that much better than just binging it back to back to back to back to back.
And just honestly a sign that this show is doing good things right now.
If we're getting this excited and wanting the next episode this badly, then they're doing something right.
So season 3 off to a very good start. We're off to a good start. 2 episodes in a row of Bring Your Own Lightsaber. I'm Ryan. This is Cam. And remember, always
bring your own lightsaber.